one upon each of the last two batches, and they may be lengthened gradually, the last being of any length. The essential points of these sentences are, therefore, first, that they should be bona fide expressions commonly used in the language, and consequently that they should be originally written in the language by a native. Second, that they should be simple, ordinary, colloquial expressions, and therefore that they should not be written by learned men who would probably spoil them. Third, that they should be extremely short, the first set not exceeding 3 words, and the others very gradually lengthened. Fourth, that there should be a large number of them in the first set of words, so as to make as much use as possible of those words before proceeding to new ones. Fifth, that there should be as great a variety of expressions in the sentences as possible. In printing the sentences there should be, first, the native words separately and in the proper character. Second, under each of them, the same word in the English character. Third, the most exact English meaning of each individual word. And fourth, the full power of the sentence freely given in English. The use of the native character is to enable a native to teach from the book, who does not know English. As one great point in preparing these materials is to provide for a person having to learn the language with the help of natives who do not understand English or who are not thoroughly qualified teachers, it is desirable, if possible, that these sentences should have numerous notes subjoined, giving all the information that can be suggested by each sentence, and that can, in any way, help to give the student an intelligent knowledge of the language. These notes should, if possible, be written by an intelligent Englishman, who will know from his own experience what misapprehensions beginners are liable to form on account of their English ideas, and what points are likely to be difficulties to them. If the first 2 sets of words had 10 sentences in each, and the last 1,000 words 4 on each, the whole of the sentences on suppose 2,000 words would amount to about 10,000, which would be sufficient to make the student thoroughly at home in expressing himself freely on all common subjects. Besides these general words and sentences, each student, according to his profession, ought to have a separate set of words and expressions belonging to his peculiar occupations, whether those of a magistrate, a merchant, a missionary, an engineer, etc. But it would be of no use his acquiring this information till he was in some good measure grounded in the more general use of the language, and therefore he should not perhaps take such a list of words in hand till he had gone through the first 2,000 general words with their sentences. The professional sentences should contain, of course, only those words already learnt in addition to the technical words. With these sets of words and sentences, there should be a short grammar containing only the first rudiments, in the simplest possible form, so that it can be referred to without loss of time on any point. This, however, in fact, should be made comparatively very little use of. Rules of grammar are not wanted. A man in conversation cannot possibly stop to form the participle of a verb from the root by considering the rules. If it does not come of itself into his mouth, nothing can make amends for that defect. What is wanted is such a knowledge of grammar as a child of 4 years old possesses, that is, a knowledge which enables him to speak correctly, intelligibly, and without hesitation, though he does not know a single rule for anything he says. His speaking must be independent of any rules, whether he has learnt any or not. Yet a short grammar, to be looked into occasionally, at first may be of some little assistance in acquiring the inflections of the nouns and verbs, etc., but the grand means of acquiring a grammatical use of the language must be simply the repetition multiplied of a good variety of correct forms of expression. Nothing can be more absurd than insisting upon knowing the rules of grammar before a student can be allowed to know a language. If a man talks English grammatically, that is, correctly, he is never examined as to whether he knows any rules. Perhaps he never learnt a line of any English grammar, but it makes no difference. But it is always expected that a man studying a foreign language should be able to stand an examination of a kind neither he nor his examiner could stand in his mother tongue. The same man who meets a stranger in the street and knows well by the first sentence that he utters whether he is perfectly acquainted with English or not, is perhaps on his way to some place where he will pass hours in ascertaining whether a student has a good knowledge of a language foreign to him. These are, therefore, the materials which I would put into any man's hands who wants to study a foreign language for colloquial purposes, namely, a vocabulary of perhaps 2,000 words divided into sets of from 100 to 250, with about 10,000 common forms of expression composed only of each set of words and those words previously learnt. These printed both in the native and English character, with a verbal and a free translation, the sentences to be aided, if possible, by copious notes, giving all the collateral information possible, and to these to be added a very short, rudimental grammar. It will not perhaps be necessary to give the verbal translations of any but the first 2,000 or 3,000 sentences. As to the student's further study, he may of course now with perfect ease follow the ordinary plan, that is, take up any book that contains the sort of words and matter most suited to his line of life, with an ordinary dictionary and grammar, to which, however, he will have very seldom to refer. He will know so large a portion of the words that the context will generally show the meaning of any new word he meets with, and he will lose very little of his time in that which usually occupies about 3/4 of all the time expended in such studies, namely in turning over the leaves of a large dictionary and guessing which of the several meanings there found for a word is compatible with those of the other words of the sentence before him, many of which he has also yet to ascertain. But his great business should of course be to converse as constantly as possible in order further to exercise his tongue and his ear, and to add to his stock of forms of expression. It is to be remembered that, in using books, a principal exercise should be reading aloud and having them read aloud to him by a native. If his occupation will require formal writing or translating, of course he must exercise himself a good deal with books. It is well known that the most easy and certain way of acquiring a correct and easy style in writing in any foreign language is to make or procure accurate translations of native books, and then retranslate them, comparing such retranslation with the original, and thoroughly considering the difference between them. This can be done with the greatest